webcast on Horseplay. The presenter this evening is Dr. Jenifer Nadeau. Jenifer is an associate professor and the equine extension specialist for the University of Connecticut. She grew up riding and working with horses, including trail, hunter jumpers, draft and race horses, and rides both English and Western. Jenifer received her master's degree from the University of Tennessee in comparative and experimental medicine. She also received her PhD from the University of Tennessee in animal science. Her research focuses on equine health, while she also teaches horse science for undergraduate students and works in extension outreach with adult horse owners and 4-H Horse Project members. Jenifer is on the board of directors for the American Youth Horse Council, a member of the American Society of Animal Science, and is the superintendent of the Horse Bowl Committee for the Eastern National 4-H Horse Roundup. She also enjoys trail riding with her students in the University of Connecticut Forest. Please note that you are able to ask questions during the presentation via the text chat on the left side of your screen. Our facilitator for tonight's questions is Dr. Carissa Wickens, who is a professor at the University of Delaware and specializes in animal behavior and welfare. Dr. Wickens is also our speaker for the January webcast, and will introduce her webcast at the end of this presentation. The presentation today will be recorded and uploaded to our website if you wanted to review the talk at a later date. And at this time, I will turn the presentation over to Dr. Nadeau.
Okay, thank you very much, Gwen. And one thing that I was hoping that we could do is just take a moment to think about the people in Newtown. Actually, some of them were very big horse lovers. One of the kids was a rider who loved horses, and another was a little girl who loved horses very much and wanted cowboy boots for Christmas. And I also have a very good relationship with the Newtown Bridlelands Association there, and they're very big horse enthusiasts. So I thought if we could just take a minute to think about them and have a moment of silence, and then we'll proceed. Okay, well, tonight's webcast is going to focus on our different aspects of horse behavior. And we are going to, first of all, have an overview looking at a comparison of the domesticated horses to feral horses in behavior. So that will be one of our focuses. We'll also talk about the different types of equine behavior. We'll look at some equine body language, and you'll get to practice your chat by typing in what body language you think they're exhibiting. I thought could be a little bit interactive tonight. And then we'll also define horseplay, and we'll talk about the different types of horseplay. There's 3 main types that we talk about: solitary, social, and object-directed. And then we'll talk about some recent studies on horseplay. There was even one that just came out in April. So that will be interesting. And then we'll talk about whether vices, develop from horseplay. So that will be our topics for this evening. So if you think about it, we have taken the horse from a feral state where they were roaming, looking for resources, which were pretty scant, and we've now created this artificial environment with a lot of resources for them. So it's really changed how their habitat is. And we always wonder, what effect will that have on their behavior? But it's interesting that even though horses are domesticated, they still retain a lot of their feral behaviors. So we're going to talk about that as we proceed this evening. So looking at our different types of equine behavior, one type that we talk about is our agonistic behavior. And that is your basic dominance hierarchy. You think here about, I guess we take this from chickens, the pecking order, where, probably horses get annoyed because they're like, oh my goodness, another horse is coming into our herd. We have to figure out, again, who's on top of the herd and who is subservient and who we get to steal all the food from. So the types of behavior they'll exhibit when they are concentrated on agonistic behavior includes kicking, rearing, charging, and other behaviors such as that. There's also some less dominant behavior, such as champing. We're going to see that later. That's kind of where the foals smack their lips together. It's more common in foals. You will occasionally see it in an older horse. Also, we have allomimetic behavior, which is mimicry, infectious or contagious behavior. If you think about early man, he used that behavior to his advantage, for example, to try to drive horses off cliffs or round them up into a canyon. So he was trading on that horse's allomimetic or mimicry type of behavior. The next type of equine behavior we have is epimuletic. That's giving care and attention. So for example, you'll see horses grooming one another's withers, and a lot of times when we're working with foals, we'll mimic that giving care and attention by rubbing on their withers to let them know that things are okay, which simulates mutual grooming, which would happen in the wild. And then we have epimuletic behavior, which is calling for attention on separation. For example, we hear that when a foal is weaned from its dam. They'll call to one another. Or, when the horse arrives in a trailer, the other horses call to it, and you always wonder, what are they saying? Are they like, hey, are you from Jersey? And the other horse is like, no, I'm from Connecticut. I always wonder, what are they saying? Like, hey, what do you do? Or what are you here for? But we don't really know. I guess we'll never know what they say. Then some other types of equine behavior are ingestive behavior. And it does seem like horses would always like to eat. We know that they have small digestive tracts, so it does require them to eat, fairly regularly small amounts of food. So because of their psychology and their physiology, they have this ingestive behavior. And then sometimes if they're not given sufficient forage to munch on, they'll find other things like, for example, manure. So they'll engage in coprophagy, which is eating other horses' manure. Now, a foal will do that naturally to try to get microbes into it from the environment, but sometimes horses that don't have enough roughage will also eat manure, and some just seem to like the taste of it. Who knows why they would do that? But we do see that behavior. And then we'll also see bolting feed. That's another type of ingestive behavior where you give the grain and the horse eats it as fast as he can. And there we worry about choke and things like that. So we try to slow down that. And it's a great invention, that new slow feeder that they have for hay, for example, kind of gives them more to do. Like maybe a horse is a little more on the heavy side and can't really eat as much feed. We can give them a slow feeder for their hay, and that will help them to slow down their eating, which would be good. Another behavior we will see is cribbing, where they'll chew on wood and either suck wind or not suck wind. And we know that that behavior comes from the fact that it releases endorphins and kind of gives them a natural high. And these are behaviors that Carissa's going to be talking about in her upcoming webcast as well. Also, you'll see wood chewing, where they just chew on the wood, not actually sucking in any air. Mane and tail chewing, usually chewing on other horses' manes and tails, not so good if you have show horses. Digging or pawing. A lot of times in the wild, they may have had to dig through snow or dig down to try to find some water. So they might think that they're going to be rewarded if they do that. And if you feed them when they're digging or pawing, then you are rewarding that behavior. And so that can lead to them still doing that. And then pica is just when they eat strange things like dirt, rocks, other odd objects, baling twine. So we don't really encourage that. Next, we have eliminative behavior, and that is basically defecating and urinating. So in a field, we will see an area which we call a rough, and then there's an area called a lawn, and the area called the rough is where the manure will go. So the horses normally would have an area in their pasture where they will defecate, and they usually will not graze by that area. And that perhaps was a way to prevent them from being infested with parasites. I mean, they usually roam from place to place, so that really wasn't an issue for them. Also, eliminative behavior can be a form of territorial marking. You'll notice that horses will sniff a manure pile and try to seem almost like they're trying to figure out whose that was, and that lets them know, in the wild, stallions would mark their territory by defecating and urinating, so they could sniff that, and that would let them know who was in the area and whether they thought they had a chance to stand against that animal or not. Also in this list, we could include reactive behavior, which is your reflex behavior. For example, if they withdraw their limb, they feel a pressure on them and they move their limb away, especially to pain, for example. Or communicative and vocal behavior is another type of behavior. Shelter seeking, where if there's hail or something like that, they go and seek shelter. And then we also have sleep and rest behavior. Horses are alert and active for more than 19 hours, and about 2 hours they spend in a drowsy resting state. I remember one day I was picking some burrs out of Fiona, one of my favorite horses here's Maine, and she had fallen asleep. She was in her drowsy resting state, and all of a sudden she woke up and saw me there, and boy, I scared the dickens out of her. If a horse could jump, I think she about jumped out of her her fur there. And then 3 hours in a REM or brain sleep. And brain sleep is when their muscles aren't fully relaxed. The horse can actually be lying down or standing up because it's capable of locking its knees and hocks with its tendons with a stay apparatus. So the brain in that state puts out slow electrical waves, but the horse doesn't necessarily have to be laying down. The REM sleep, the animal does need to be lying down, and there will be some electrical currents of the brain, and they'll have the same pattern as when the animal is awake. So they usually lie down for about 4 to 5 periods per day. And during this REM sleep, it's a deeper sleep than slow wave. Their mind is active, but their muscle tone is almost completely lost. The next type of behavior we have to discuss is sexual behavior. So in stallions, again, we have that dominance hierarchy coming into play. So each time a stallion moves into another stallion's territory, and the stallion has a herd of mares, usually in the wild, the horse will have his own harem that he keeps, and bachelor stallions will try to steal that harem from him. And so then they might have to fight with their agonistic behavior to prevent that from happening. So genetics are probably going to help to determine which stallion is going to be the strongest and most capable of fighting with this dominance hierarchy. And we actually have a study that talks about that coming up, so we won't talk too much about that now. But we can also train our horses not to exhibit these behaviors when we're breeding them, for example. So some examples of these behaviors would be biting, striking, rearing, charging, crowding, and phlegming. And we'll be talking more about each one of those specifically, so we won't spend a lot of time on that right now. But we all know what biting is. Striking is when they strike out with their foreleg. And I know one day I had a couple of students who were trading horses because they were getting ready to go into a ring, and one was taking a horse from the other. And they got a little close, and one had gelding, but he had been gelded late, so he struck out with his foreleg, and he knocked that poor student in the hand. So that is something that can happen with the striking behavior because it kind of catches you off guard. You're not used to the foreleg coming forward like that. And usually what happens is it seems to catch you in the hand or somewhere like that on your body. And then rearing, we know, charging, when they charge at another horse, crowding, that's kind of like, when they're getting pushy. And then the phlegming, when they curl their upper lip. Usually the reason they're doing that is they want to get their smells into the vomeronasal gland, so they're taking in those pheromones and determining whether the mare is in heat and things like that. Or what that strange smell is, for example, or what is peanut butter. Those are times you would see phlegming. And then we have mares. Now they will exhibit estrus behavior. They also have anestrus behavior when they're not not ready for estrus. So kicking and kick threat usually come when they're not in heat. If they were actually in heat, they would be squatting, winking their vulva, letting the stallion know that they're receptive. So we didn't put all of the examples of estrus there. Those are actually examples of anestrus that we have. And then we have our geldings, which are sometimes a gelding, as we said in my earlier example, could be gelded late, and then he acts a little bit more stallion-like, and we used to call that proud cut. We used to think that maybe he retained part of a testicle or something, but studies have found that that's actually a hyperactivity of the horse's adrenal gland, and it's producing testosterone, causing him to act that way, and also poor training can play a role in them acting like stallions. So then we have our different types of equine body language, and as horse owners and enthusiasts, we have all learned how to read equine body language, and it's kind of a survival thing for us, I guess, because that lets us know what's going to happen next. And the more that you're around them, the more it's easy for you to understand their body language, I think. We all know that ears pinned back flat against the head is never a good sign. That means we got to get out of there ASAP, right? Then we can have our ears back. Sometimes like they'll just be drowsing or they're thinking, and so their ears will just be back. They're just in that drowsy resting state. And then they'll have ears. Sometimes their ears will be going forward and back. That's just kind of a listening state. And then we have their ears pricked forward. Sometimes that can be anxious or fear if we see like a little white in their eye too. And sometimes that's just their bright, alert, responsive look. They're interested in something or interested in what you have, or they hear that crinkly peppermint. And then we have tail swishing. A lot of times, like for example, if you watch high-level dressage, the only way you realize that the person has given a cue is that tail swishes just a little. And that usually lets you know that the horse is maybe just a little aggravated about something. So sometimes we can see that coming through. Okay, now I want you to practice your writing in the chat. So someone write in what emotion this horse is conveying. Like, what do you think these ears mean? Yes, yep, that horse is alert and interested in what's going on. In the veterinary terms, if you see it, like a lot of times they'll write a subjective idea of what the horse is exhibiting because they have their SOAPs, subjective, objective, assessment, and plan, and they'll write BAR. That means bright, alert, and responsive. So yep, this horse is exhibiting interest. Now, how about someone should try this one? What about this horse? What do you guys think? Anyone want to take a stab at what Alcott's giving us? Caution. Yes, he is he's got his ear on us and his eye on us, and he's not really quite sure what to think, is he? You can tell that in him. He looks just a little tense and you can't really be quite sure. He's kind of listening to us and trying to figure out exactly what we're up to. Doesn't really like that camera there. Okay, someone want to give this one a try? Yes, now that's real interest. Yep, that is right. All right. Now this horse, what type of behavior is he exhibiting out of all the ones? Is that dominant hierarchy? Is that, agonistic? Is that eliminative? What do we see? Dominance, yes, because he's at the feed. And also, this is our ingestive behavior because he is ingesting his hay. Okay, now with this one, what do we think is happening here? Like, do you look at the middle horse. What do you think is going on with this horse? Anyone have a sense of that? Yes, so this horse right now, he's kind of trying to keep low key, and he can see that, things could change in a hurry here, right? He's got one set of hindquarters toward him. He's got this other horse. These horses are like in a little state right now, right? We can't be sure exactly what's going to happen. It seems like, maybe things could fall apart here. Okay. How about this guy? This is our old stallion ringmaster. He just passed away this fall, actually. He lived to be 34 years old. He was a great Morgan UC ringmaster that we owned. He was born here at UConn. Can you guys see his ears? Yes, again, interest. Yep, he's very interested in what's going on. Good, everyone. Okay, now what do we think the horse on the right is exhibiting? And what about this horse on? Someone write about the horse on the left, someone write about the horse on the right. How about that? Yep, thread on the right. That's right. What do you guys think about the one on the left? What's up with that one? Caution, yes, he is not sure what to do, really. He's trying to say, like, hey, I'm like no threat. I don't really want any trouble from you. Okay, now here is another example of our agonistic behavior. And what do you think the one right in front is showing? Now, this is actually called champing, and it's what the foals will do. Do you think that this is actually, I don't know if we've talked about, so we talked about this just a little, but this is actually a submissive behavior. So I figured I would just talk about, you don't see that one a lot. They'll kind of clap their teeth together a little too when they do that. So that's our agonistic behavior. Here's one that will be a little more familiar. Now, what category would you put this one in? Yes, aggressive. That's what we don't want to see right now. That's a kick threat and probably like an actual kick going on there, right? Yes, get off my butt. That is right. Yes, agonistic behavior. Very good, everyone. And then you can see this one here. Now, which horse do you think is dominant here, the darker horse or the lighter horse? Look at their body language. Yes, the darker one. See how his leg is over the shoulder? Like right now, he is dominating. The other one's trying to go for his jugular, but yes. And does anyone want to take a stab at how to spell the behavior that we have here? This is an ingestive type of behavior. What do we got? Yes, coprophagic. Yep, coprophagy is what we see here. Very good. And then what would you call this one? Does anybody remember that four-letter word for this abnormal type of behavior? Yep, pica. That's right. That's what we see here. And then here is our other type of behavior. And what behavior is this? Does anyone know how that one's a challenging one to spell too? Kind of interesting there. I used to like to, yep, phlegmin, yep. And the good thing about that one is you can even get them to do it with like peanut butter and things. Sometimes that's kind of fun just to watch them exhibit the phlegmin. And what behavior do we have here? I'm sure we all recognize this. As much as they eat, seems like a lot comes out, huh? Yep, so that is our territorial marking, our eliminative behavior. Yep, peppermint candy will cause phlegmin, and I never tried candy corn. I'll have to try that next time. Gee, that's a good one. And what do we have here? What behavior is this? Fiona has never exhibited phlegmin from the sunscreen. She's gray, so I always have to put that on her because she gets sunburn. Yep, ingestive, and also a little bit like, bordering on pawing, isn't it? Like it's hard to tell what's going on with that leg there. Yep. And what do you have here? What's happening here? Oh, that's actually some manure. So that is our yeah. That's hard to see. These are actually some photos from the book that we're going to talk about at the end of this as a resource by Sue McDonald. But that's manure. So yep, that's our eliminative behavior. Checking out that territorial marking. And what about this guy on the left? What behavior is that? Does anybody know? That's the one I was kind of telling you about earlier with my student there. Yeah, that's the striking. Yep, that's the one you really have to look out for because you can really get hurt by striking because I don't know, it really seems to catch you off guard. You don't expect that a lot of times. Oh, what do we have here? Now this is what we are almost experiencing sometimes when you have those horses that are trying to push you around a little bit. So we can get that happening. Yes, that is crowding. And what do we have here? Yep, our tail swishing, that is right. And what's this behavior here? Yes, that's pawing. And for our last one, what do we have here? Yes, ingestive behavior, drinking the water. Very good. Okay, so now that we have our basic behaviors down, we'll actually go and get into our subject of horseplay. So the definition of horseplay, there actually is an actual definition, believe it or not, is activities that appear to have no immediate use or function to the horse, but they do involve a sense of pleasure and elements of surprise. So we really think that horseplay has multiple functions. Ethological is a way to talk about behavioral studies. And it's really indispensable in modern husbandry systems or management systems. Taking care of animals is called husbandry. So it really serves a variety of adaptive functions, as I talked about in my little infomercial, if you got to see that. But really what it does is it does enhance general musculoskeletal and cardiovascular fitness by their playing. They get to practice and hone specific survival skills related to breeding, aggressive behavior, reproductive behavior. Oh yeah, so that's the same thing, sorry. So we see that. And then they also gain familiarity with their particular environment. So they get more used to their environment through their play. And they do learn how to build social relationships and communication skills, much like children do through their play. So when we think about horseplay, we realize that it's vital to their development. Actually, up to 75% of their kinetic or movement behavior of foals is play. And they play as early as the first day of birth. So they play pretty much right away. And it's most frequent and conspicuous in foals, yearlings, and bachelor horses. It does occur in mature adults, but it's more common in bachelor stallions, and it's more common in harem stallions than mature mares. And we're going to see some studies about this, but it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like, you know, the mares just don't have time to play. They're too busy like taking care of the foals and things like that. So that's probably why they don't play as much. So big boys toys and things like that, you could make an agreement for that or not, but we won't get into all that. It's just kind of funny. Okay, so looking at the purpose and timing, it's really a modified form of these serious survival activities, like we said earlier. So like locomotor, like being able to move away from any danger, aggressive behavior, and also reproductive behavior. And usually you can tell that it's play versus something serious, sorry about that, by specific postures and expressions. And these let the other horse know that they're not serious in their intent. Kind of like the dog has the play bow, the horse has like a certain little toss of his head that he will give to let others know that he's playing. And we're going to talk more about that as we go. And usually we'll see play fighting behavior in bachelor bands and also among juveniles. And a lot of times it occurs at the same time as sudden changes in the weather, much like when you are on a cool windy day after like a hot summer day and you're like, uh-oh, I might get bucked off today. It's kind of the same thing with when play happens. And maybe that bucking is a form of play. So, okay, so most play really does occur in the daylight hours, which makes sense because that, you know, horses really aren't nocturnal. I mean, they'll graze quite a while and during the night and things, but they're not exactly nocturnal animals. So Schoen et al. Found full play bouts were most frequent between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. and peak of playing was between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. So they're at their best in the morning. So when we get into the different types of horseplay, play can include things like solitary play, object-related play, social play, and sexual play. And now we're going to talk about each specific type. And also it can include play fighting and manipulation of an object, which has actually come up with quite a market for play. More and more people are buying objects for their horses to play with. So the initial way that horses play is solitary play. The foal will run circles around its dam with, you know, different directions, different diameters of the circle, and the circle will gradually increase, kind of gets bolder as it gets older. And through 2 weeks of age, this will be like the main source of play. And then at about 2 weeks, it'll pick a direction and run off. So that's another kind of play that it will do. It might do some self-grooming, some rolling. They counted that as types of solitary play in the McGreevy and Tyler studies. And then also the foals will practice grazing or drinking behavior. They won't really eat anything. They're usually too young to do that, but they'll kind of copy their moms, like in a form of play. And typically when they're less than 1 day old, they'll actually engage in this sort of play. So the types of solitary play we can see, one example is frolic. Frolic's kind of fun. Both the fore and hind legs are simultaneously propelled off the ground, and there are apparently exuberant, random bucking, head shaking, and body twists. So we've all probably seen frolicking and been like, wow, I'm really glad I'm not riding that horse right now because that looks pretty scary. I don't know if I could stay on. So that is one form of solitary play. Next we have running. That's another form of solitary play, like we already talked about, the running in circles or the running in one direction or the other. And there's also prancing, which we've all seen. And then we have our bucking, we have our jumping and we have our leaping. And what differentiates jumping from leaping is that leaping is all 4 feet kind of like bounce off the ground at the same time. So it's really pretty wild. We also have stamping and we have rearing. Then we have our object play. This is also known as manipulation or manipulative play, and it involves the contact and manipulation of an object. And this object can be inanimate, like a ball, for example, or it may be animate, like this horse chasing the dog. So right now we are going to do a poll and see how many people's horses engage in object play. Gwen, did you want to do the object play poll? Okay, here's your chance to vote for your does your horse play with objects? Looks like we have quite a few people who voted. Does anyone else want to vote? Okay, some people don't have horses, so we'll view votes. So it looks like quite a few people had we had 58.82% had horses who played with objects. Does anyone want to type in like what objects we had? Tigger running around with a sticker in his mouth, for example. Wow, rears and throws a traffic cone. That's pretty cool. Wow, opens and shuts the sliding doors to a shed. That's a smart horse. Does anyone's horse play with a jolly ball? Like we have them at the therapeutic riding place where I volunteer, but I haven't seen anyone actually playing with them. So I was curious about that. Wow, he rings a bell. Oh, that's cool. Wow, your horses throw them over the fence? That's cool. I'd like to see that. Cool. Great. So we have many horses who seem to play with jolly balls and ringing bells, opening videos. I know, this would be great. We're going to have to get people to send us the email of these things. Okay, so going on with our types of object play, we can also have some other different things that you may not have even thought of as object play, but like, for example, nibbling is considered a type of object play. So is sniffing, licking, and nuzzling. Mouthing, like mouthing a branch like the little foal's doing down there, and mouthing this log. And also chewing is another form. And then we have pick up, we have shake, we have carry, like this horse carrying the little horse, and we have drop or toss. And then we have pulling, we have pawing, and we have kicking up. Although that's really a threat there, huh? And then we have going to and from an object, like the foal running away from the manure bucket there, circling the object like the foal running around its dam, and this is called a resting rear that you see here. So our social play is another form of play. We talked about the object play. Now we're going to talk a little bit about social play. And that develops usually around 1 month of age. And that involves more than the horse playing by himself, but also playing with other horses, like the horses throwing the ball over the fence to the other horses would be actually social play too, along with object play. So they'll have an alert posture. This is how the other horse knows that they're just kidding around, that this isn't serious. So they'll have an alert posture. They'll have a nose-to-nose approach. They might nudge the other one to let them know. They might nip them a little bit, toss their head, and they might paw at their prospective partner. And then a lot of times both of them will toss their head, so they'll have the mutual head toss. So this way, the other horse knows that they're just playing. It's not serious. So they shouldn't get alarmed. Also, we could see mutual grooming, like in this picture. And social play usually does not include vocalization. And we do hear vocalization in serious fighting. But frolicking does include snorting and audible squeals, because frolicking is really pretty high tech there. Another one that we see is chase, like you see the foals doing there. And King of the Mountain, I didn't have a full picture. People keep saying they're going to send me one, and I haven't gotten one yet. So I would like to have one with horses if anybody wants to send it. But King of the Mountain is another one. And I don't know if anyone's seen the Jingle Goats YouTube video, but that's pretty funny. They do a great King of the Mountain there, but I haven't seen a horse one yet, although I do know that they play King of the Mountain like that. And then we also have play fighting. And play fighting has more of a sporting character than serious fighting. The horse will actually take alternate offensive and defensive roles, kind of like football. Like they change it up every once in a while. They don't always play the same side. But they do stop short of injury. They never hurt one another. It's just all in fun. It's also called interactive combat or contact play and aggressive play. I think like the little bit of squealing is probably play, not really serious. Do you have a feel for that, Carissa? Do you want to tackle that one? And male foals are actually much more likely to play fight than female foals. And, you know, it's speculated that that's because in the wild they would be taking over that stallion's harem, hopefully as a juvenile stallion there. So they're practicing for what their real role would be like in life. And the most fit stallion would be the one who would get the harem. We also have the head, neck, chest, nip, and bite. So they'll either nip or bite another's head, another's neck, or another's chest, which you can see in the photos there. And if you look down here, you can see this one is called the neck grasp here. And then we have the neck wrestle. So we can see those different ones. And then we have play fighting, where we'll also have foreleg nip, biting, and grasping. And we can see hind leg nip, biting, and grasping, like you see there in the lower left. And we can see the rump nip or bite, and we can see a push, like that little guy's doing to the other one over there on the bottom right. We'll also see hindquarter threat. You can see the guy in the top right there, he's kind of giving a little threat that no one is going to get that away from him, that little milk carton or whatever it might be. You've got kick. You got the evasive balk, which is our bottom right there. You've also got the evasive jump and evasive spins. So you get to see those. And sexual play is our next type of play that we're going to tackle. So we have social play, now we have sexual play. And this is conspicuous and frequent in foals and young adolescents of both sexes, among young horses just in general. So what happens here is the pre-copulatory and copulatory sequences may actually be out of order, or they'll be exaggerated from that of a mature adult that's in a breeding context. So you'll realize like there's no actual breeding going on. They're just playing. So we can see things like teasing. You might see some mounting, like totally, awkward there. And then you can see an elimination marking sequence, like you see way over on the right, which would be more of a solitary way of sexual play. Okay, now we're going to switch gears and get a little into some different social play studies. So there was a study out of England that looked at 8 young domesticated horses that were out on pasture, and the researchers used 100 hours of observation, and they had 134 total social play bouts, which was an average of about 1.34 social play bouts per hour. And 115 of these social plays were initiated by an individual, and 19 the groups got together and decided to play together. And all horses in the group initiated at least 2 social play bouts. So out of these 8, all horses initiated at least 2. I actually have the year now, sorry about that. But and in Iceland, there was a study of 34 horses with 488 hours of observation. And here, adult mares did not play. So the mares that were, over 5 did not play at all. And 4-year-old geldings played the most, or on average about 5 to 6 times an hour. Fillies played less than colts, and horses actually preferred to play with others of the similar age and sex. So they were faithful to their playing partners. They would keep finding their same playing partner and going back and playing again and again with that same horse. No, the mares that were in the study were not in foal. I don't think that the mares were in foal. They were just adult mares that were not in foal. And then the next study that we had was a study of horses on 4 farms in Norway and Denmark. So here we had horses in male groups and we had mixed sex groups. And we found that these horses in male groups and mixed sex groups actually performed more play behavior than horses that were in female groups. So with the mare group, it was 0.5 plus or minus 0.2 social interactions. The gelding group had 10.7, and mixed gender had 8. So you can see that mares played a lot less when they were together with other mares, and definitely your geldings played more in this study. And then we had a study of Front Royal Przewalski horses, and it was found that these horses spent 1% of their time in play. Adult Przewalski mares at the Bronx Zoo spent only 0.2% of their time in play, while foals spent 1.5% of their time in play. And RIFA found no play in adult Astrakhan ponies, but foals spent 0.6% of their time playing. And then there was another study looking at wild horses in New Zealand in 2008, and they actually found that healthier dams lost weight and strength, providing more food, more milk actually, to colts in order to turn them into more highly competitive males. These were Kamanawa horses. They live in year-round bands. They have multiple mares in the herd, 1 stallion and their foals, and these researchers track them by horseback and helicopter. They feel that the reason that the healthier dams provided more food to these colts to make them more highly competitive is that colts could leave more offspring than fillies, since they'll be able to sire more offspring. And so they gave the colts more food, more milk, more protection, and more direct contact. And then the dams in overall poor condition ended up investing more time and resources in fillies, and these fillies would then go on to produce. Since they had fewer resources, it was less likely that their son would be as vigorous because they were in poor condition, so their son would probably not be as vigorous. So he would be less likely to breed, so instead they invested their strength in their daughters. The bulk of the parental care in these cases fell on the dam, but the sire does occasionally groom and play with the foals. And more care from the and if a horse has more care from its dam, it will play more. It helps to enhance physical and mental health. And the playful individual usually grows into a healthier adult, and then the process begins again in these wild horses. Another hypothesis that some other researchers had, Jorgensen and Bowe in 2007, was that a larger paddock size would increase running or playing. So they had a non-exercise treatment period. There were 0.2 plus or minus 0.7% play observations, and play was rarely observed, and it was not affected by exercise or treatment periods, so it really didn't matter. The larger paddock size didn't seem to increase running or playing, and they wondered if it was the fact that the horses were mature and that they were familiar with their paddock and the daily activity. Next, we had another study looking at horses that were turned out for 2 hours a week, and they found that these horses were more likely to trot, canter, and buck than horses that were turned out for 12 hours a week. I think we could all attest to that from riding, too. If we don't get our horses out, sometimes that can lead to some trouble like that, huh? And then some recent research on social play from the University of Rennes in France. This was Hausberger et al. In April 2012, which is a really recent study, just came out. The goal of this study was to determine why domesticated herds played more than mature wild horses. So they had 29 lesson horses that were worked 4 to 6 hours a week and kept in individual stalls. And a single researcher observed the horses in 2 one-hour sessions when they were turned out in paddocks with small familiar herds of 7 or 8 individuals. And they noted each instance of social play. And each horse was assigned a total chronic stress score. And this was based on their aggressiveness toward people, which was previously shown to be associated with back problems in another one of their studies, and behavior in their stalls, such as a withdrawn posture, like turning their back to you when you go in the stall, tactile reactivity, so reacting to you touching them. And they were assisted by a therapist to assess the potential vertebral problems and the localization of these problems. And they also measured the cortisol levels in these horses, which can be a sign of stress. And they found that horses who exhibited the greatest amount of play behavior in the paddock had the highest total chronic stress score when they were evaluated in their stalls. So these horses tend to be withdrawn, they were facing the rear wall of their stalls, they were more aggressive toward people, and more likely to show signs of back pain. So they concluded that horses that play are showing signs of stress, and that happy adult horses graze, rest, and move slowly. So that's sort of an interesting and maybe even a little controversial study, but more studies like this will need to be done to determine if you can make a generalization like that. Do you have any feedback on that one, Carissa? Okay, because Carissa also does behavior, so we'll just see what Carissa has to say too. Do play objects designed for horses really stimulate play is the next thing that we are going to talk about. So 12 adult horses, 6 males and 6 females of mixed breeds, 6 to 20 years old, were used to test object stimuli to see if they would manipulate an object and play with it. So they used sacks of different materials. There were 5 different sacks. They were made of textured and smooth surfaces of bubble wrap and anagalipta wallpaper, brown paper, and cotton. And these horses were introduced to the sacks for 5 minutes in a stable that had only wood shaving bedding. And this behavior was then recorded on videotape. And object play was only exhibited twice throughout the study, and levels of total object manipulation were low. The average was 1% of observation time. So they really didn't play with the sacks too much at all. So this shows the different types of behaviors that you would see. Full pawing at the object with its front leg, biting the object, picking up the object in the mouth, shaking the object, orienting toward the object, sniffing the object, or nuzzling the object with its nose. So then they said, all right, so that one had a low level. So they repeated the study using a group of predominantly juvenile horses. They used 2 females that were 2 years, 1 male and 1 female aged 3 years, 1 female 5 years, and 1 control female aged 20. And they found significantly higher levels of object manipulation and play in this population than in the adult group. So when they looked at juveniles, they played a lot more. So the horse aged 20 in this population actually displayed no object play during the trial, and the younger horses within the group exhibited more total object manipulation and object play than the older horses. So it might be that young horses just play a lot more to learn about their survival skills, like we were saying. And it's interesting that last French study, perhaps play is being used as an outlet for stress, which was what the authors were suggesting. So that's kind of interesting. And we'll have to see if more studies follow up with that. So the next question is, do horses develop vices due to play or lack of play? So first we ask, what is a vice? Much like gambling in people, it's a negative. It's also known as a stereotypy, but it's a behavior like that usually has a negative association with it, and it could be dangerous to people or to humans. And usually about each horse, there's like a 5 to 25% amount of vices in the horse population. So we can see different vices like kicking, rearing, striking, biting, bucking, bolting, and shying. Also, we could see, so those are pretty common ones. I mean, we've learned striking already. Bolting when they run away from something, especially like out on the trail, something spooks them, they run. Shying when they're going away to the left or to the right, quickly sideways from an object. For example, the other day I was on a trail ride with Fiona, and there was this new curtain drain that had been put up, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is she? So when we went over it, it was fine. She was a little spooked at first, and I was like, oh my goodness, because I didn't even know that thing was there. But I wasn't nervous or anything. I just asked her to go, and she went right over. But she, had spooked just for like a second. And then the next time we went over, started spooking again. And I'm like, well, what are you afraid of? You already have been over this. And you know what it was? There was a guy down in a hole inside the drain, inside the little place where the I guess it's like a dry well, and he had popped up out of it. So you just never know how, when spooking is going to happen. She had a good reason for spooking, because I guess someone coming up out of the ground is pretty scary when you're not expecting it. I didn't even know he was there. Okay, next we have stall walking. When they pace around their stall, we'll have weaving, when they're weaving back and forth. So we can see that. A lot of times a mirror will actually help with that. We'll see pawing, like we said earlier. We talked about cribbing and windsucking and coprophagy and head, pica. And then head nodding. Lots of times the draft horses do that. I always wonder, like, is their bit bothering them, or is that like a gene that draft horses have? Why are they head nodding? Okay. Next is, so really, I've found no evidence of any studies saying that horses have developed vices due to play or lack of play. So I don't think that that's how vices develop. I think it's probably vices are more likely to develop out of boredom. So play may perhaps prevent vices. Vices are most likely linked to nutrient deficiencies, or, and also maybe some psychological problems if they do have those. But since adult play behavior is fairly low, it probably indicates that no, vices do not result from lack of play, which is common in adults. More likely, vices are linked to nutrient deficiencies or boredom, like we said. And also, horses can become habituated to play objects. Maybe that's why some of them don't like the jolly balls. Maybe they're too habituated to them. Like other domestic animals, like cats, will become habituated to a play object, and they require variation in their objects. Yes, and as Carissa points out, lack of socialization is another reason that we can see some of these vices, especially like weaving. Now I have kind of a fun horseplay video for you to watch, but we have to give it a minute or two to start for some of us, and then I'll wait a couple minutes at the end just so that you have time to catch up, because sometimes it just takes a minute with our with the technology. So just be prepared for that, and we'll talk to you in a minute. This is just a fun video of what you could do with your horse.
Let's go get us a hamburger. Every time we'd start to go anywhere, he would just act like he wanted to go with us. So I said to Robert, he acts like he wants to go. Why don't we fix the car so he can get in and out? He says, okay, good idea. So we fixed the car, and sure enough, next time we went to town, he hops in and sits down, and he's ready to go. Go get us a cheeseburger. He does just like he's riding in the car. He's watching the scenery go by. Oh yeah, it's definitely he's definitely expression, watching the scenery. We would be out riding him around in the car, and we would get hungry, and we'd want us a hamburger. And when we'd pull in to get one, Well, naturally, the first thing we thought about was Patches. I reckon he would like one. Hello.
How may I help you?
Let me see what Patches wants. What do you want, Patches? You want some cheeseburgers? Yeah, you want? Okay.
Will that be all for y'all today?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That'll be all.
Please go to the window. Hello. 24.23.
Hey, thank you. He has ate as high as 5 cheeseburgers. Yeah. And, but no, he don't care much for Coke. He'll drink apple juice. He loves apple juice.
What kind of behavior do we see here?
He really likes TV. He likes that a lot. But he likes Westerns. Okay, go get the beer, Patches. Go get some beer. I'm probably the guilty one for that. I drink. So I'll send him to the fridge to get me a beer. So he'll open the fridge and reach in and get a beer and bring it to me. Bring it here. Bring me a beer. Bring it here. Bring it here. Bring it over here. Come on. Good boy. Good boy. Thank you, Patches. Thank you, Patches. He answers the phone. Whoop, it's for you. But he doesn't actually talk. You can put the phone up to his mouth and he moves his lips. There's no other horse like Patches. Patches is one of a kind. All right. Come on, here it is, here it is, here it is. Here, here, get it, get it. Here. Good night, Patches.
Okay, hopefully everyone got to see Patches the horse. I thought that, that's a little bit of horseplay, maybe more on the people's side than the horse side, but I thought that you might enjoy that video. And it just goes to show, how we can train our horses and have a great relationship with them and get them to play a little in our way too. And you could see he was doing some object-related play by pulling up his sheet there. He was getting the beer from the refrigerator, so that was another form of object play. And he was also doing his ingestive behavior. And he was talking a little bit too, so we had a little bit of all of that. So I also want to point out our resources. There was a variety of research articles. I'm happy to email you any of the links to those. It's really easy to find the ones that we talked about. If you go to the archive and write down the name, and then you could use Google Scholar to find those. That's an easy way to get to them. And also, I used a lot of examples from the book, the Equid Ethogram, A Practical Field Guide to Horse Behavior by Sue McDonald, PhD. Many of the pictures were from that book. And she also has another book called Understanding Horse Behavior that's really helpful. So if you're interested in behavior, that's another great place to start. She has a great herd of research horses that she uses for her studies. So I thank you very much for joining me today, and now I'm going to turn it over to Gwen.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Nadeau and for her presentation this evening. This definitely was a very interesting and kind of a fun one to be a part of. And also, of course, we'd like to thank all the participants. Thank you for attending this evening and being a part of one of our programs. We will be sending out a survey in email in the next few days, and if you could take a few minutes to give us some feedback, it would definitely help us as we plan more webcasts. And we have some upcoming webcasts that we'd like to quickly talk about. We've got Dr. Carissa Wickens, who is, of course, our question facilitator today. She will be talking about cribbing, weaving, and other stereotypic behaviors in January. So that's on January 22nd at 7 p.m. And then we have, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit, and we're going to be moving to talk about some showing trends by Dr. Kathy Anderson in February, and in March, Taylor Fabus from MSU is going to be talking about youth life skills through equine activities. So after January, we're going to kind of move from the behavior topic more to kind of showing and kind of a youth focus. And so we hope you can join us for all of that. We also will be sending out some information to all of you on a free webcast series that we're going to have coming up the end of January through the beginning of March, and this will be on our Equine Business Network. So it's going to be on all sorts of things such as liability and insurance and hiring practices for horse farms and things like that. So you'll see some advertising from us on that shortly. And one last thing, of course, if you'd like to join our My Horse University herd on Facebook and Twitter, you'll find our most up-to-date information on events and courses and all that kind of good stuff. And finally, I just wanted to remind everyone that this webcast was recorded, and we're going to be uploading it to our website here very soon, tomorrow actually. So feel free to send us your comments and suggestions to info@myhorseuniversity.com. And lastly, we'd just like to thank everyone once again, and we hope you all have a great evening.